Hello, fans of Cheese of Ages. I thought I would, come back for a brief video looking at the first release of the playtest materials for Dungeons & Dragons Next. I'm recording this video, of course, as the upload date below, so this is the first wave of playtest material. Basically, the earliest beta stagings of the materials. All that was released with this first wave was basically the materials to get pre-gen characters of the classic Dungeons & Dragons classes to 3rd or so level. And it doesn't have any of the promised module or optional rules things you can plug into the system. This is basically the core system you will plug everything into when they release the thing. Some brief details of what they promise for next is it's been said that they will have every class and race that has ever been in a PHB 1 to be in the first PHB for D&D Next. So tieflings, dragonborn, half-orcs, gnomes, halflings, monks, barbarians, warlords, all of that will exist in some form in the PHB 1 for D&D Next, and I'm happy to hear that because I liked having the warlord. I love the warlord for various reasons I won't discuss in this video. I love having the martial guy who leads through skillet arms, and I'm a military tactical guy. I love playing that, and the fact that he will exist in D&D Next is something I'm happy to hear. They've also promised where all these rules modules that you can be plugged in will work together. Where you can have a 3.5 style mage or a 4th edition style mage. Right now the base rules system is all they've got in the playtest materials, so this is what it will plug into. So what is the mage like in the this is what you plug it into thing? Well, it's somewhat Pathfinder-ish in style, as all mages have some slight utilitarian trinket spells that they can cast as much as they want, that they can select from a list. For instance, I cast the light spell whenever the frack I please, or I cast prestidigitation whenever the frack I please, because it's such a minor spell. But then you have spells that you have to prepare. So they went back to the 3.5 system, Pathfinder-iness, in a way, doing it somewhat like Pathfinder, which everybody knows Pathfinder's just basically 3.75 anyway. You can consider D&D Next sort of, right now as it's flavored and how it feels, it's basically 3.85. While Pathfinder is basically 3.5 with some elements of 4th edition, D&D Next is Pathfinder with some more elements of 4th edition. In some ways they've, going into the actual system itself, they've simplified some things a bit, while at the same time adding more complexity back. So in other words, they pretty much scaled it back, 3.85. But in some ways it could be sketchy in complexity, because right now I can't really tell. It seems like they might have addressed the issue, but one of the glaring issues of 4th edition is that there was over-condensation in skills. Too many skills were merged. For instance, unless you flavored in something in there yourself, there was no actual rules to explain, like a thief. This is an example another YouTuber, reviewer of 4th edition, actually used. What if my rogue, or bard, or whatever, was part of a street performing group, and is a pickpocket, but he's never seen a trap in his life? In 4th edition, pickpocketing and disabling traps are both under the same skill. Why, if I'm good at getting something out of your pocket, am I good at defusing a bomb? To exaggerate it slightly. Because basically, under the same skill is, I'm carefully going into your pocket, and I'm grabbing this, and I'm pulling it out without you noticing. And while that could be useful in pulling pins and stuff out of mechanisms, you're basically saying, Because I'm good at reaching into a pocket and pulling something out without you noticing. I'm good at disabling a clockwork mechanism or tripping this complex mechanism, and I'm also good at picking locks that are complex and have a completely different process. What about a street performer that's picked pockets but has never ever seen a trap, or only occasionally picked a lock? What if he's only a little bit good at picking locks, great at picking pockets, and can't disable traps? There's nothing in the rules that do that in 4th edition. And to an extent, Dungeons & Dragons Next fixes that because the way skills work is different. In Dungeons & Dragons Next, all skill tests are actually ability score tests. While one could say, in the grand scheme of things, technically, you roll a d20, you add your ability score modifier, and then you add a modifier from your skill, is how it's always worked. But there's a slight mechanical difference here. The focus is put on the ability score, somewhat like Warhammer, as I went over in my Warhammer Rogue Trader review. The focus is put on the ability score and the mechanics of the system, so it will be geared more towards your ability score modifier, with the bonus from your skills being more oriented towards giving you a slight boost or expanding your uses of your ability scores. For instance, if you buy a certain kit for the rogue, you're trained in like picking locks, disabling traps, and picking pockets. And that will give you a +3 to dex checks in each of those situations. If you're trained in like moving silently, or basically, let's go something else. If you're trained in wilderness lore, like you're nature-focused kind of thing, you know a lot about nature, wilderness lore, you add a +3 to any situation which uses wilderness knowledge, whether it be an intelligence check to recall or identify knowledge of flora or animals, flora or fauna, or you're trying to look around in nature to see if any non-natural stuff's been mucking around in the area. You would get a +3 to the score, but you're using different ability scores for the same general thing. For wilderness lore is the skill, but you're using different ability scores with that skill. It's hard-coded into the system rather than, coming across this kind of situation, which if you DM a lot or you play a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, you know the situation comes up a lot, where you run into a use of a skill, but it doesn't perfectly match the ability score that's associated with it by default. They've hard-coded the house ruling for that, like use the ability score for this instead. Like, in 4th edition, you use nature for handle animal, but nature's not charisma-based. Shouldn't your charisma go towards handling animal? And this way, it's programmed into the system. If you're using your wilderness knowledge to tame an animal, you would make a charisma check and add your +3 wilderness lore bonus to it. So, while doing it this way, rooting it towards bonuses to ability score checks adds a lot of diversity and flexibility to skills, and I actually enjoy that. It's a masterpiece. Well, not masterpiece, but it's masterful complexity while still being simple. It's depth without being crazy complicated. It adds lots of uses and hard-coded situational fixes, like I mentioned before, for the veterans like me, while still being something I can explain to a newbie in a short, concise sentence. I enjoy it. It's easy to understand. You want to calm down the animal. Okay, make a charisma check, and since you have knowledge of animals, add a +3 to it. That's really simple. You have wilderness lore, you know nature. You're trying to talk to that animal down. Charisma check, +3. Boom. Easy to understand. Complex, but concise. It's masterful. I like it. Very well engineered, and I look forward to how they're going to do feat support and skill progression. I'm hoping the skills are going to be like they are in Rogue Trader and the Warhammer 40k RP pencil and paper system, blah. And when they get to around to the character generation rules, where it's more focused on giving you more uses of your ability scores rather than, being skillage and boasting on skills. While it could be argued that Dungeons & Dragons system's always been about giving you more uses of your ability scores, again, the focus here is more on the ability scores rather than your skills. Previously, it's been like, oh, I have skill training, I have a skill, I'm using the skill. It's never been really about I'm using my ability scores. It's like I'm using the skill. In this way, I'm using my ability score. I'm being dexterous, and I happen to be just applying my stealthiness to it. I'm trying to be stealthy, but they focuses on the score, your ability, your physical ability, rather than your actual training towards it. Your training boosts your ability to do it, rather than being your ability to do it. If you can understand what I'm talking about, I've kind of ranted on and rambled. Another key difference from 4th edition is that another part of the going backwards a bit. Now, don't get me wrong, going backwards in some ways is somewhat beneficial, and the modularity will fix the backtracking, hopefully. But it resorts back to old systems like I might have explained with the spellcasting, being back to a more 3.5 Pathfinder-ish style. And melee classes that are like weapon specialists are back to whacking each other with sticks, rather than having like powers they use. It's back to that. I'm not entirely sure I like it. I will want modular rules that would give fighters like the option to have powers and shit. If a player doesn't want the powers and just wants to be like I hit things with sticks, go for it, but hopefully that will be able to work. Right now, the fighter is basically, I am the best at hitting you with a stick, which is fine. That's what the fighter should be. And it seems to be reasonably there in power early on, but that's something that requires a heck of a lot of playtesting, because right now, in 3.5, the fighter was good early on. He was the fighter guy. He was fighting. I'm protecting the wizard. The wizard's sitting behind me wishing he was the fighter. And at level 20, the wizard was like, I am everything, and I'm doing everything by myself, and I'm automatically winning everything and beating everyone, and the fighter can't do a shit about it. Fighter here, wizard over here, initiative starts, the fighter's gone. That's how powerful it was. Don't get that way. I'm hoping it won't get that way. I agree, the mage should be more powerful, but the fighter should have some means of leveling the playing field if he's, sharp. The fighter should be able to fight anything. The mage should have a distinct advantage, but the fighter should be able to get around it if he's, sharp, rolls good, and utilizes his abilities properly. And he could, overcome with his last breath, kind of like, I managed to get past the fireballs and the force cages and all the other crap, and I just, at the last breath, I managed to finish the wizard off. Or the wizard, basically, he's had time to plan. Sure, if he's expecting the fighter and has everything laid out before him, and he's planned perfectly for the fighter, he should win automatically. Because villains, if you fight them on your terms, should win. If you fight them on their terms, have an insane advantage. But yeah, I'm rambling, and this is a discussion for a heck of a longer video, its own video. Yeah, basically, in summary of that, I agree that Mage should be a little bit more powerful. It's magic, but fighters should have some means of counterbalancing it in some way, where if they just go through all hell, they can just go through it. Unless, it's possible for them to, fight through the power and fight through the fire and flames, and get through it with their last breath, take the mage down with some support. And 3.5 in the later levels, basically a full party going up against a wizard with nobody with use magic device or spellcasting capability could not beat one wizard. If the wizard basically, if you included all the supplements, it didn't matter who rolled the highest initiative score. The wizard could have rolled a 1 on initiative, and every single member of the hero party could have rolled a natural 20 on initiative, and it still didn't matter. They would still never get a turn if you included all the supplements, because the wizard was just that fracking broken. It shouldn't be that much of a power difference. I agree. In 4th edition, they're too close together. Well, at least at first they were. Now that there's so much supplements and they showed so much favoritism to the wizards, the gap's a little wider. But I wanted to strike a balance where, the mage is more powerful, but the fighter's got some means to overcome the hill. As I've said, rambling many times. And there should be options for the fighter to have, like, specific tools for fighting mages, but they kind of have to, like, oh, I have this anti-mage tool instead of this over here that would be good for something else. That would be just generally good kind of thing. Yeah, it's a... Fighters, weapon specialists not being resorted to only having I whack you, and mages being suitably more powerful but not overpowered is a big design issue that could lead into a series of videos discussing it. And I'm sure it's something that's freaking racked their brains for every edition they designed, getting the proper balance between mages and non-mages. And 3.5 and even Pathfinder, especially after they released the Ultimate books, mages were to the point where you play somebody with magic. You have to have magic. And that's not how the system should be. The mages should not have such a distinct advantage over people that don't have magic. We're talking about people without magic that live in a world of people with magic and big scary dragon-like stuff. These people should be equipped to fight on a somewhat even playing field, where, like, 6 out of 10 times they'll lose, but 4 out of 10 times they'll manage to eke out a victory, by the skin of their teeth or less. Sometimes, like, 2 out of 10 times they'll just dominate because they managed to get a good situation, and like 2 out of the 4 times they've managed to barely eke out something. They should have somewhat even, but usually kind of be outpowered. There should be a reason where, oh, the guy over there with magic is pretty good, but I'm good here too because I cover this area of expertise, and I'm like the guy. I've got swords. I'm pretty much in the same battlefield area. I'm still in the same league. All throughout the game, I'm still in the same league. It shouldn't be like late game, no point in playing anything but mages. Yeah, but this is a discussion for another day again. All in all, yeah, they've said everything seems reasonably balanced, but again, that's something that the full level progression needs to be tested. Right now, they only have the first few levels. In fact, right now, the fighter seems a little too fighty, in my personal opinion. At 2nd level, twice per day, he can attack you twice. While that might not seem a huge fracking deal, that's basically... At 3rd level, he gets the ability to attack 3 times a round if he kills somebody with one of the attacks. While that might not seem a hugely big deal, the wizard can only, like, blap you once. The rogue, he can only stab you 1 time and sneak attack you. The fighter, he can hit you with a 2d6 weapon twice. He can wield every single piece of armor in the game, every single weapon, and he can use it twice as much. Well, hey, that's fighty. He's like, I am the supreme guy at fighting. I am a fighter, that is what I do. But that's kind of like, wow. And sure, rogue, he's the skill guy. He's not really the hugely combat guy, but his one attack, he does like a d8 plus a d6 damage, let's say, because he's like wielding a d weapon and he's hitting you with a sneak attack. At 2nd level, he's doing 2d6 extra damage, and at 3rd level, he's doing like 3d6 extra damage. So he's packing just a little bit less damage than the fighter, but he compensates with his slightly less damage by it being 1 attack roll. So it's actually reasonably balanced. The combatants are, up in your face, thrashing your ass with the weapons. Right now, it's pretty evenly matched. In fact, mages are slightly underpowered damage-wise, but they kind of have their own balancing things by like having utilitarian stuffs and being a battlefield control-y and like distance-y stuff. But it's reasonably balanced right now. I'm rambling-y and getting all rambly and making no sense right now. I'm blurgy. Why did I say blurgy? But basically, let's get down to the summary. I'm really hopeful. I enjoy several elements of the materials so far. A lot of it has me excited, clearly, because I'm rambling and going off on tangents so much and being like blah. Probably also helps that I've had like 6 cups of coffee. uh, but yeah, I'm excited and hesitant about some things, and uh, yeah, I'm looking forward to more playtest materials. I like how the skill system works. It's nice, refreshing, and adds complexity while potentially solving the problems with oversimplicity. While sure, there's technically only 6 skills now because there's only 6 things that you're rolling tests for. Skills work differently because they're basically, when you're trained in a skill, you get a bonus to under the circumstances in which you're using that ability score, like for +3 to dex checks to pick locks, and probably eventually, probably you won't be able to pick locks unless you have training in the skill. That seems like something that would should be implemented. And only rogues can sneak. Rogues can sneak in a lot easier circumstances than non-stealthy oriented races. I'm not races, but classes. I'm sure like a ranger kind of thing would be able to kit himself out for stealth. And I don't see like the warlord in the playtest materials, but that's understandable. Warlord will probably end up being a subclass of the fighter or something rather than an outright class, because a martial guy that leads, while it could be its own class, hey, it's been its own class in 2 past editions. It's something that could easily be put into like a variant of the fighter or paladin. In fact, it could be just like a kit that you put on either the fighter or the paladin. I could actually see kind of a warlordy template thingy being added to any weapons class. Hell, I could see that being designed in such a way in which you could put it on any type of class, where if you're an arcane warlord kind of thing that leads with spelliness or something, it would be harder to work with the mage classes, but there could be something that could make a warlord of any kind of variation if you make a warlord of as a subclass kind of thing. There's a lot you can do with this kind of modularity. Another key thing is a lot of the skill trainings and stuff and subtle proficiencies and stuff seem to be focused more in your background and your character theme rather than your class. But since they don't have the character generation rules out yet, I have to go with what they've said in interviews and questionnaires, and from what I can see in the pre-made characters. It seems the skill bonuses are being determined by the background and the theme. So you could be like a class and have like a different kit of skills based on your theme in your background. But I imagine certain classes only have certain themes they can go with, or certain backgrounds only really mesh well with certain classes kind of deal. I could see that being very nice. And being alleviated to a lot of variation and customization, being able to like maybe have like a rogue that's an assassin for a holy orders, have kind of an avengery thing going on, or something like that. Have a rogue that's kind of bard-like, or a bard that's more rogue-like, or have a kind of a thug that's a fighter but has roguey skill. I could see that working very well. And I'm looking forward to more materials and seeing all this modularity they've been talking about and variant plugin rules that they can put in. Another thing that works differently is healing surges and hit die. Well, they've brought back hit die, where you've got like a static hit point thing, and then you have a hit die that you roll to add your hit points. I think it's kind of, I'm still going over that part of the thing. And healing surges are around, but your hit die are sort of work like healing surges, where you roll a hit die, like a d12 if your hit die is a d12, or d8 when you would normally spend a healing surge, and you've lost that hit die for healing surge purposes. So basically you have a healing surge per character level, and it works differently, and it's interesting, and it's something I looked forward to seeing expansions and figuring out more in the future. I'm just now going through that portion of the rule sets and learning everything. But all in all, in general, it's actually pretty interesting. But right now, as it stands, despite all the interesting things, If this was just what they were putting out and this was D&D Next, I'd ask, what's the point? But of course, this is just the nitty-gritty. This is not the final product. It's enough to, whet my appetite for it. It's like, okay, this is basically just some house rules on 3.5. Yeah. One thing I don't like, and I hope they put in one of the optional rules modules, is they got rid of alternate defenses. I like non-AC defenses, like being able to target force with reflex or will. I like those. And I'm like, oh, well, if they got rid of those, they must have brought touch AC back. Nope. Spells target your AC. And while I can see that making sense from a mechanical standpoint, I don't like it. Yeah, I want, either I want my non-AC defenses back. I like that, how that worked. I want that back. That better be a rules module. Anyway, I'm getting near the time limit, so I'm going to end it now. Again, in summary, I'm hopeful for Dungeons & Dragons Next, and so far the first wave of the playtest materials has me hopeful and somewhat hesitant. They're doing a lot of things that are interesting, and I'm hopeful for will be expanded on and developed well in the future, and it looks like Dungeons & Dragons will have a bright future if they fulfill on all their promises. Next time there's the second wave, you'll see my opinions on the second wave of release material when it comes out. So this is Shoes of Ages, signing off at the end of this rambly, pointless garbage and poorly orchestrated stuff. Bah.